Yes, good afternoon or good morning. Today is Thursday, September the 17th, and today is the our last lecture on the first unit, which is dealing with the art of prehistory, and that means that on the 18th, Friday, September the 18th, you will have your first test on this unit. And so, yes, the test, of course, you can take over the weekend if you like to give yourself more time to study. But there is a 50-minute time limit once you begin taking the test. It's made up of objective questions, multiple choice questions, maybe some matching questions, and those kind of things. Okay, let us finish this unit by, as it says there in your assignment, talking about Hinduism. And there we are. So today, the world's largest democracy, that being India, is also one of its youngest democracies with one of the most ancient civilizations. The nation of India was actually only founded in 1947, although India is one of the oldest civilizations on the planet. India has approximately 900 million people. By comparison, the United States has 340 million people. China has a billion and more. But yeah, India, very crowded country. It's not exactly one of those places that I put on my wish list for travel. But yeah, so today, India is also probably the most likely site for the next nuclear war because both India and their neighbor, Pakistan, ever since the creation of both countries, have been at each other's throats, and they're both nuclear armed. Ancient India of the no, Harappan and Mohenjo-Daro civilizations were actually very technically and culturally advanced for that time, because we're talking about here 3,000 BC. The Harappan civilization, like um, the Roman, although predating the Roman by about 2,000 years, the Harappan civilization had running water. Yeah, running water. Sewers, flush toilets. Yeah, interesting. So they were technically advanced. And once again, the oldest religion on the planet is Hinduism. It is a religion that, like that film said, has no recorded beginnings. You say, what does that mean? Well, it means that by the time Indians had learned how to write things and recorded things, Hinduism was already well established. So, for a matching section, what is Sanskrit? Sanskrit is the form of writing used by the ancient Harappan and Mohenjo-Daro, the Indian peoples. They kept a history of their um, culture, one of the earliest histories, in a series of volumes called the Vedas, which is right there. See, yeah, it's a history, basically a history of ancient Indian civilization. Ah, yes, Hinduism. Hinduism, the caste system. The two are really interlinked, and it's kind of hard to understand. I gave you that little video, short video, to show it to you. That video just talked about the creation of the earth, how Hinduism and the caste system intertwine together. Like I said, it's hard to understand unless I will once again reach out to the nerds amongst you and myself. Star Wars. Anybody seen Star Wars? Do you know what happens in Star Wars to a Jedi Knight when he dies? When, for example, Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Yoda, of course, they're all Jedis. When they died, what happened to them? Well, when they died, they actually became part of, wait for it, the Force. And if you understand that, you understand Hinduism. Not lying. No, Hinduism has three major gods, like the film says. Brahma, Brahma, the creator god. Um, Vishnu, Vishnu, the preserver god, the god that populates the earth. And then there is Shiva, Shiva, the destroyer god. Those of you who play a lot of video games, Shiva is often used as a fighter. Shiva, it has 4 arms, and each arm has a sword. And yeah. So, how is that interlinked with the caste system? Well, according to Hinduism, we are all born into caste. What are castes? Very, very rigid social classes. I mean, the top caste is the Brahma caste or the priest caste. The second caste is the Vaishya or warrior caste. The third caste is the Kshatriya or the merchant class. The fourth class is the Sudra or the serf class. Do you have to worry about writing this down? No. You just have to know that there exists a series of steps. And at the bottom of the 4 castes I just mentioned are the untouchables, the pariahs. And if you ever heard the term, that person became a pariah, that's where it comes from. Yeah, the mostly the pariahs were people who had the misfortune of being infected with leprosy. So you can see why they were considered pariahs or outcasts of society. And so, yeah, they were outcast of society. But here's the part you also don't know, that stepping, that series of steps, extends on into the animal world. Now, if a person in one of the castes lives a good life, a noble life, a moral life, and then he dies, he moves up and is reincarnated. We call it reincarnation. They call it the transmigration of souls into a higher caste until eventually that person's soul becomes part of the Brahmin caste, aka Jedi Knights. I mean, George Lucas stole the idea for the Force from Hinduism. Not all he stole. I'll get to that in a minute. But anyway, once you get to that top class, the Brahmin class, and you live a moral life, and then you pass away, you then are the technical term they use. You are absorbed into the world soul. You become part of the Brahman, the God itself, part of the universe, or George Lucas called it the Force. By the way, and see, I've seen all the Star Wars films, including the original, and I saw it when it came out. Did you know that 20th Century Fox, and by the way, George Lucas shopped this idea for Star Wars in the 1970s all over the place. Nobody was buying. And finally, 20th Century Fox said, all right, sure, we'll do it. And on a shoestring budget with actually the only actor they had of any note wherewithal was Sir Alec Guinness, who played Obi-Wan Kenobi in the first film. And, they said, all right, sure. And if you ever watch the original Star Wars, the special effects are, I saw them filming. They use a lot of strings and it just looks terrible. But anyway, but George Lucas, I mean, 20th Century Fox was so sure that this was going to be a piece of junk, that this film, Star Wars, was going to crash, and not selling tickets, that they allowed George Lucas to keep all the rights for any promotional sales. That means Star Wars t-shirts, Star Wars lunch bags or boxes, Star Wars toys. Every day, every time somebody buys a lightsaber or a little tiny Luke Skywalker, you know, doll, and there's like hundreds of them by now. Um, George Lucas gets paid for every single one. I know this because when my son Wes was born, I bought lots of them. In fact, I still have a lot of them. I have pretty big Star Wars. Wes didn't want it, so I have a pretty big collection of Star Wars toys at home. Yeah, maybe one day I'll sell it. But anyway, I'm a nerd. What do you want? But see, Star Wars is art, and art imitates art. It also imitates life, but it also imitates art. Art imitates each other. And in this case, yes, George Lucas borrowed the idea from Star Wars and the Force from Hinduism. Yeah, Hinduism. So now you understand Hinduism and the caste system. And by the way, once you're born into a caste, you die in that caste in India. And once you're born into a caste, like I said, the only way out of it is to get leprosy, and that means you're an outcast. Get it, the word outcast? You ever wonder where that word comes from? Outcast, caste system. But anyway, George Lucas borrowed from that. And in the caste system, not only do you live and die in a caste, you can't associate with anyone outside your caste, whether you want to or don't want to. Yeah. Okay. Let's move on and finish this chapter, shall we? Some historians argue that China was the world's first civilization. Come see, come saw. Between China and Egypt, there's a there's a debate over which civilization began first. However, that argument turns out to be that there is no doubt that China is the world's oldest living civilization. You say, what does that mean? Well, it means that if you go to Egypt today, nobody speaks Egyptian. Nobody worships the Egyptian gods of Isis and Osiris and things of that nature. And the Egyptian culture has pretty much gone away. However, you go to China, they still speak Chinese. They have Chinese cuisine, cooking, Chinese customs. In fact, they revere a big part of China to this day is still revering the way things are done in the past. So, Bronze Age China is divided into two dynasties, the Shang, the dynasty, and the Shou. Yes, Son of Heaven and the Mandate of Heaven. The Chinese had a perception about their ruler, their emperor, that he was the Son of Heaven, that meaning that he was a god. He was a living god. And for the longest, until the last Chinese emperor was a guy named Pu Yi, who had to abdicate the throne in the year 1912. Yeah, 1912. Yeah. And he died in 1967, but he was considered a living god. Now, China has had many dynasties. Dynasty is a family of rulers. Well, why would they change? Why haven't they had just one dynasty? Like, for example, the Japanese. Japan has an emperor and will have an empress. Their only living heir is a girl. But yeah, the Japanese have only had one dynasty, one family ruling Japan for all of its years. The Chinese have changed, have several dynasties. And what happened to them? That's where the mandate of heaven comes in. Mandate of heaven, no, that is not, who you take to prom. Um, don't you like my jokes? The mandate of heaven is the idea that an emperor has the right to rule so long as he has the mandate or approval of the gods of heaven. And once he loses that, something happens, meaning he gets assassinated, or there is a catastrophe like an earthquake, flood, famine, an invasion by a foreign enemy, something of that nature. That is an indicator that this dynasty has lost its mandate, the will of the gods. Pardon me. All right, push on. Now, Western civilization is traced backwards like this, basically. Part A is there you're looking at what we have now, modern Western European, which includes American and Japanese cultures. Then is Western European history, medieval European history, the Roman world, the Hellenistic world of Alexander the Great, and then the Hellenic world of the Greek city-states. E and F, by the way, you see that. We're going to study that in the next unit. And the Aegean world. Yeah, we'll study that a little bit too. The Aegean world, and the Aegean refers to the Aegean Sea, the sea that separates Greece from Turkey, the Aegean Sea. The Aegean world centers around two ancient Bronze Age civilizations. For example, on your test, which civilization invented iron? It was a people called the Hittites. Hittites. The Hittites. They are mentioned prominently in the Old Testament. They went to war with the ancient Hebrews. Pardon me. They went to war with the ancient Hebrews. Their great advantage was that they had iron weapons. Iron weapons, which were heavy and did rust rather quickly, but they cut through the bronze weapons of all the other peoples, like, knife going through hot butter. The Hittite civilization, though, came up against the Egyptian civilization, and whereas the Hittites had iron, the Egyptians had chariots. And that's neither here nor there. But they basically fought each other to a standstill, and yeah. So, yes, which civilization invented coin money? It was a small civilization along the Aegean Sea on what is now Asia Minor, what is now Turkey, called the Lydians, Lydians. So the Aegean world, yes. The Bronze Age civilizations of the Minoans and the Mycenaeans. Two Aegean Sea civilizations. The Minoans lived primarily on the island of Crete and maintained a very advanced civilization. Plumbing. The importance of plumbing. Yes, these ancient pre-Greek civilizations, the Minoans and Mycenaeans, had developed plumbing. What does plumbing do? Plumbing does two things, very important. And you guys are about to be driven crazy because one of my favorite topics that fascinates me to no end is plumbing. Am I a plumber? No. But would I know how to practically do plumbing stuff? No, absolutely not. But to me, it is fascinating throughout history, the advent of plumbing. And part of that might be owed to the fact that I grew up in a house without running water. And so I've always been fascinated by plumbing and its importance. So what does plumbing do? Once again, two things. Number one, and this is easy. Plumbing delivers water that we can drink. like ice water. Americans, and I'm one of them, so spoiled with ice. Anyway, so plumbing delivers running water into your house. But the second job that plumbing does is actually more important than that, if you can imagine. Plumbing carries away wastewater. Plumbing carries away wastewater. Plumbing carries away wastewater. And that's actually more important because you can't live on top of your own feces, literally. It is a breeding ground, as you know, for germs, and of course, the smell is most unpleasant. But I mean, beyond that, it's a real no. No, it's a real unsanitary. It's like, in fact, if some enemy of this country wanted to really bring this country to its knees, if they could find some way to disable the sewage system, and we're going to talk more about this later on, trust me, ad infinitum. But right now, everybody that I'm talking to, including myself, today went to use the bathroom. And then after they did it, they kind of forgot what happened to it. What happened to what they put in the toilet. And the answer, I know the answer. The answer is it ended up at a place next to Ludlow, Kentucky, right on the Ohio River. It's called the Dry Creek Wastewater Treatment Plant. Yeah, it's right next to the Ohio River. And at that plant, all the sewage, raw sewage, that we turn out here ends up there. And there, they take it and they separate the, from the water using a series of filters and chemicals and all sorts of things like that. And then they collect what they then call sludge. And here's the interesting part. They take that sludge and they make a mountain out of it. And after they get so high, they then lay on topsoil and plant trees on it and then start another. The water, the fluid part, goes back in the Ohio River so that the people of Louisville can drink it. Yeah. But we shouldn't laugh too much because we drink Pittsburgh pee. Yeah. It's ingenious, actually. Anyway, why is it important? Because it does. It's you can't live in sewage. Oh yes, and the Minoans also worship female deities. The Mycenaeans, who came down from the north, were more warlike than their Minoan predecessors and established colonies throughout the Aegean Sea. It was these people who were probably the historical fact in Homer, not Simpson. Homer, we're going to learn about this guy, the blonde poet who wrote the Iliad and the Odyssey epics. The Mycenaeans were in turn conquered by an even more barbaric and warlike people in the north who were called the Dorians, the Spartans, as it were, and we're going to learn about them in the next unit. So right now, yes, our test is tomorrow, Friday, and it shouldn't be that difficult, but good luck, and I'm checking out. Thank you.